So you have chosen to factor by grouping. Awesome. Here's how this is going to go. When we're looking at a trinomial, our first term, we use the coefficient a. So this is ax squared plus bx plus c. C is our constant, that comes last. A and b are numbers here. Like this would be a 5 and this could be a 4. So when we're factoring, we want to find out what multiplies to a times c. So our first term times our constant. And we're going to choose the pair that adds to b. Now this is going to look a little bit familiar. So if we look at our first problem down here, a is 2, b is 13, and c is 6. So I need to choose the factor pair that multiplies to a times c. Well, a times c would be 2 times 6, that's 12. I need two numbers that are going to multiply to 12 and add to 13. Does this look familiar yet? These are the diamond problems that you solved before. So if I know my number needs to multiply to 12, well, what are some numbers that multiply to 12? I've got 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. I need the pair that adds up to 13. Well, that's my first pair, 1 times 12. So those are the numbers that I know would be the left and the right sides here, 1 and 12. Here's where the factoring by grouping is coming in. So what that tells me is that in this multiplication problem, so let's look back at our multiplication problem. If this was the multiplication problem that I started with, my two terms that added together to give me the b, the x term here, were negative 12 and 2. In this problem, my two terms that added together to give me b were 1x and 12x. So I know I have a 2x squared. That's my first term. And now I know that my middle term came from 1x plus 12x. And I know the last term here was positive 6. So now that I know what these two middle terms are, sometimes we call this splitting the middle. So I started here, and I split my middle term into 1x and 12x. Now that I've got this, I can do my factor by grouping and consider both sides separately to pull out the GCF. So my greatest common factor of 2x squared and 1x would be x, and I'm left with 2x plus 1. My greatest common factor of 12x and 6 would be positive 6, and I'm left with 2x plus 1. So I would factor 2x plus 1 out of both of these, and I'm left with x plus 6. So this is my factored form. If this was the answer I ended up with, this is the multiplication problem that I started with. And I can check my work, because of course I can. If I check my work, and you totally should, 2x plus 1 times x plus 6. So let's do some quick distributing. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 6 is 12x. 1 times x is 1x. 1 times 6 is 6. So now I combine my like terms. 2x squared plus 12x plus 1x is 13x plus 6. Yep, that's the problem I started with. So that factored pretty quickly. Every time you do these problems, you're not going to necessarily write out this many steps. If writing out every single step is going to be helpful for you, then I totally advocate that you write out all the steps. But it's not always going to be necessary. So let's flip to the inside, and let's do top center. So we have the problem x squared minus 2x minus 8. Let's see if we can get that to focus any better. I think that's as good as it gets. So I'm going to start the same way I did last time. I know that my a term is, well, this time it's 1. B is negative 2. And C is negative 8. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to A times C. So 1 times negative 8 is negative 8. And add up to B. B is negative 2. So what are some numbers that would multiply to negative 8? Let's see. If I have negative 8, I know one of my terms is going to have to be negative. So I could have negative 1 times positive 8. I could have positive 1 times negative 8. Those aren't going to add together to give me 2. I could do negative 2 times positive 4. Negative 2 plus 4 would be positive 2. So that means that this pair, 2 times negative 4, if I add those together, I'll get negative 2. So I know these are the magic numbers for my middle term, negative 2 and negative 4. So now that I've figured out this pair, when I factor by grouping, I'm splitting my middle term. I'm splitting this negative 2x into 2x and negative 4x. Everything else is staying the same. Now when I factor by grouping, in my first two terms, 1x squared and 2x, my like term would be, well, not my like term, my greatest common factor would be x, and I'm left with x plus 2. On the other side, I have negative 4x and negative 8. So if I factor out, these are both negative, but I want these to be positive. So I'm going to factor out negative 4, and I end up with x plus 2. So now my GCF of these terms is at x plus 2, so that gets factored out in front, and I'm left with x plus 4 on the inside. So here's my factored form. X plus 2 times x minus 4. If I multiplied this back out, I would end up with 1x squared minus 2x minus 8. So your job, finish the last 8 problems on this sheet. Make sure you check your answers as you're working. Don't wait until the end to check them.